Today we're going to talk about hormones, ovulation, and why these things have maybe felt like they've gone off the rails for you. And I'm also going to give you kind of the three major reasons why that I see in my practice, plus the structure that you need to start getting that balance back. So first, let's talk about why hormones slide off track. These are the three most common patterns that I see in my patients in my practice. And the first one is insulin driven. Now, not many people realize that insulin plays a massive role in your hormone balance. Insulin and your blood sugar is one of the most tightly regulated systems in your body. And so if that's the case, if things are off even a little bit, your hormones can completely go off the rails. In fact, this is what we see in PCOS. The root cause for about 70% of PCOS cases is actually an imbalance in insulin. And when we see insulin imbalanced, what happens is this insulin resistance drives androgens to go up. So your male hormones, your testosterone. And what that often does is it causes, not only acne and facial hair growth, but it also will cause you not to ovulate because all of the hormone signaling is off in general. And when you don't ovulate, you won't be able to make progesterone. We know that progesterone is really important for balancing out estrogen, for mood, for sleep. So not having that progesterone becomes problematic. You could experience irregular cycles, and you don't have to have PCOS or a diagnosis of PCOS in order to experience this. Just being severely insulin resistant can actually cause you to experience irregularities in your hormones. The second pattern is what we refer to as stress suppressed. Now, stress suppressed is basically where your stress is driving the bus here, right? We know that poorly regulated stress can actually impact what's called your GnRH signaling from the brain. This can cause you not to ovulate or skip ovulation or delay ovulation altogether. Again, when your ovulation is impacted, you're not going to make progesterone and you're going to feel the consequences of lacking that progesterone. The last pattern and common pattern is low reserve or recovery. This happens in patients who have years of nutrient deficiencies. So regardless of what the cause is, maybe they are under eating, maybe they're not eating the right things, maybe they have a digestive issue like Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, celiac, maybe they have an autoimmune disease that uses a lot of their nutrients and their body just can't keep up from a nutrient status perspective. Maybe there is ovarian aging or premature ovarian insufficiency, which can be driven by environmental influences, inflammation, exposure to environmental, endocrine disrupting chemicals, other things. But genetics do play a role here. Nutrient deficiencies can lead to inflammaging or, poor ovarian reserve. So we need to look at all of the root causes. But in these patients, we can have cycles changing. We can have symptoms that look like perimenopause when maybe you're actually not in the age range that you should be for perimenopause to be happening already. This is something that we need to be mindful and aware of. And the reality is most people have a little bit of overlap in these patterns as well. It's not always cut and dry. It's not always, you're just insulin resistant. A lot of people are both insulin resistant and nutrient deficient, or they're insulin resistant and maybe they do have an ovarian reserve that is low for a variety of reasons. And so we need to make sure that your plan that you create is always based on your unique needs, your specific symptom profile. So let's just talk about how to structure your plan if these are one of your patterns. So in all patterns, we need to start with the non-negotiables. So before any herb, acupuncture, supplement, we need to fix the base. What is that base? Protein and plants at every single meal. We want to aim for protein with each meal and at least 1 cup of non-starchy veg with each meal, okay? So we want greens, we want broccoli, we want variety. Number 2 is carbohydrate timing. This is foundational because we need carbohydrates, but having carbohydrates with quote unquote clothing on is very important. Why? When we clothe our carbs, meaning we have our carbohydrates with fat, protein, fiber, we are going to slow down the absorption of those carbohydrates. So the carbohydrates that normally would turn into sugar, when given in the presence of fat and fiber, are going to support that proper blood sugar balance. So when you eat carbohydrates, make sure that they are clothed. For example, having a white piece of bread by itself is going to be worse on your blood sugar balance than having that white piece of bread with peanut butter. Obviously, we can choose a higher quality slice of bread. We can choose whole grain. It's going to have more fiber. We can choose sourdough, right? So there are a lot of options here, but that's the easiest cut and dry example. Carb timing when you eat a mixed meal is also important. Eating your carbs last, eating your fat, your fiber, and your protein before your carbs can also help blunt that blood sugar response, to keep your blood sugar balanced. And realistically, all of the 3 patterns that I've discussed need to focus on optimal blood sugar management. That is really the key to a lot of things. Next is fiber. It is the general recommendation to hit a fiber target every single day of 25 to 35 grams. If that is something that you're not currently doing, work towards that, ideally in a dietary sense. If there are reasons why you cannot have a high fiber diet, obviously speak to your doctor about that. But the general recommendation for women is 25 to 35 grams per day. Beans, flax, berries, cooked veg. Next up is sleep. Optimizing your sleep. Dark room, cool environment, downtime before bed. Get off the scrolling, the doom scroll, right? Get in a routine before bed that helps your body get from fight or flight to rest and digest, to wind down, right? If you wake up unrefreshed, we need to screen for things like sleep apnea and nutrient deficiencies that can be contributing to those symptoms. Strength training. We know that 2 or 3 sessions a week of strength training, again, this doesn't have to be crazy. This doesn't have to be 2 hours. If you're going from nothing, make it something, right? Go from nothing to 20 minutes to 10 minutes of strength training. Go from lifting no weights to lifting 5 pounds, right? Strength training is anything more than you're doing now. But strength training is so important for insulin signaling, for bone health, for mood, for sleep, for inflammation. And reducing endocrine disruptors is huge. Use glass or stainless steel for food. Never store or eat your food in plastic. Choose fragrance-free items. Choose paraben-free products. The Environmental Working Group is a great resource for this if you're really looking to dive in. So let's chat about the 3 patterns and the additional strategies that you can add in to help support these. So number 1 would be someone who has cycle issues and they struggle with blood sugar or insulin resistance. So certain nutrition moves that would be helpful in this case is choosing a lower glycemic pattern, choosing foods with a lower glycemic index, keeping most carbohydrates to whole fruit, beans, lentils, potatoes, and rice cooked then cooled can increase their resistant starch, which is going to be better on the blood sugar. When you have breakfast, whether that's right in the morning or when you break your fast, have protein and fat first. If you drink coffee, do not have it on an empty stomach. Supplements with supportive evidence for this pattern include inositol, N-acetylcysteine, omega-3s, vitamin D, especially dosed to your levels. We want to remember that vitamin D is fat soluble, and so making sure that we dose it based on your levels is really important. And berberine can be a helpful tool for some individuals. Obviously, speak to your healthcare provider before adding any supplements to your routine. When we look at training, strength training is obviously the winner. We need to make sure that we are including strength training a few times a week in order to help build muscle, but also help with that insulin resistance. And when we look at the mind-body connection, it's so important. Daily breath work can lower that sympathetic drive and bring you from sympathetic into parasympathetic and can help with cravings and stress hormone spikes. Now, the second pattern is someone who has stress or low energy availability. The goal here is signal safety to the brain so that we can actually rebuild and resume ovulation, because when your body is in a state of scarcity or fear, you are not going to be ovulating. The last thing on your brain's mind, or the last thing in your brain, is reproductive capacity. We are focusing on survival. So here nutritionally, we want to make sure that you are eating enough to meet your needs, right? Include fats, include carbs. Do not get rid of any macronutrients. Eating consistently, working with your provider to make sure that you have calculated what your intake needs to be and that you are meeting that consistently for a period of time. Now, there are supplements that can be helpful here, but obviously speak to your provider. Things like ashwagandha, if stress is an issue, magnesium can help calm the mind, a multi, or just dosing your iron, B12, and vitamin D so that your levels go back up to where they should be. And when stress is a core issue, we need to make sure that it is managed not just from a supplement perspective, but from a mind-body perspective as well. Therapists are a really great tool, cognitive behavioral therapy, stretching, yoga, breathing, all of the things that we need to add from a lifestyle perspective are really critical here. And the third pattern is if you have signs of low reserve or poor egg quality issues, our goals here are to support your mitochondrial function, reduce oxidative stress, and protect those remaining follicles. We cannot determine or add any follicles to your supply. You are born with all the eggs you'll ever have. But what we can do is we can optimize the ones that are there. So nutritionally, we want to focus on color. We want to focus on antioxidants, variety, and anti-inflammatory foods. So the Mediterranean diet is the most studied from an anti-inflammatory perspective. Olive oil, nuts, fish, beans, 2 cups of cooked veg daily, berries, citrus, flax, right? These are really helpful. Think variety, antioxidants, colors, right? Polyphenols are really going to be helpful here. We need to get rid of that oxidative stress. Supplements that are often used in this category include CoQ10, N-acetylcysteine, omega-3s, and then we need to replenish nutrients, vitamin D, B12, iron. DHEA is sometimes used in fertility protocols, but you have to be careful because side effects in people who don't necessarily need DHEA can be acne, hair growth, and signs of excess androgens. And in the group where we have low reserve or poor egg quality or low egg reserve left, we want to prioritize sleep, get rid of alcohol, stop nicotine, manage your heat exposure in hot tubs, especially for men. And if your cycles are fragile, we really need to be prioritizing these. In addition, acupuncture can be really helpful from a stress management perspective. And so these are some of the tools that can be helpful. Now, when we're looking at testing that actually changes the plan, if you're like, I don't know what pattern I'm in, testing is how we understand what pattern you would be in. So first pattern being an insulin-resistant pattern, the insulin glucose challenge is a 2-hour test that is going to be extremely helpful to understand if you are insulin resistant, right? It's not do you have diabetes, it's how hard does your body work to store sugar, right? Looking at that nutrient status is going to help us understand if you are depleted. Iron, vitamin D, B12 are the core ones that I look at. Looking at ovarian reserve markers, if indicated, like AMH. Sometimes we're looking at hormones like estrogen, progesterone, and we're looking at them cycle dependent to see where we're at. Sometimes we're running a full thyroid panel to see if deficiencies are impacting our thyroid. We have to understand our thyroid's ability to function requires things like iron, magnesium, vitamin D. And so if your thyroid is dysfunctional, then that can cause hair thinning and hair loss. And not many people realize the connection between your thyroid and your cycle. And so if your thyroid's off, your cycle is also going to be off. The reality is most people don't need more products or more supplements. They need to understand what their pattern is so that they can have the right treatment plan anchored to insulin, stress, nervous system, or whatever is driving their symptoms. You need to build the base, layer the supports, and measure what matters. And always speak to your doctor about any interventions or supplements. If you would like to understand your pattern better and get on a plan to suit your needs, book a free call with me and we'll chat more.